This podcast is part of the Midwest Podcast Network. Find out more about our other shows and how to support our network at midwestpodcastnetwork.com. You are now tuned in to Westworld FM, a podcast about HBO's Westworld. My name is Alex.
My name is Nick.
And I'm John.
Today we will be discussing Season 2, Episode 6 of the show, titled Phase Space. We will not be discussing the next time on preview at the end of the show, but we will be spoiling everything through Season 2, Episode 6 of the series, so please pause and go catch up if you're not current on the show. You can find more episodes of our podcast on westworld.fm. We're also Westworld FM on Twitter, and you can send feedback to westworldfm@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our show and share your thoughts on HBO's Westworld. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Westworld or our podcast. If you enjoy this show or any other show on the Midwest Podcast Network, please consider heading over to patreon.com/MidwestPodnet. That's MidwestPodnet to pledge as little as $1 a month to make our network even better. Special thanks to Jason K., who's pledged at the level of $10 a month. No corrections this week, but we do have some feedback. John, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, John.
Thank you.
Here to offer the video game insights into the show.
Indeed.
That Nick and I somehow avoid, even though we both play video games as well.
We always, by the time we touch on it, I feel like we're always like 98% done with the episode. We're like, this is like video games. Bye.
Yeah, pretty much.
We never dive into it.
But we did get some emails this week. We got one from Fred C. About episode 5 and various musings. He said, it's so odd how Bernard is totally disregarded by everyone at the HQ. I think he's talking about the 2 week later timeline with Strand there as well. He's like a houseplant. That leads me to believe that the theories about them, quote unquote, Delos, knowing he's a host. After last week's episode where he snapped the red chestnut from the lab, I think that he's now Arnold and is in complete shock of how his creations are being slaughtered. I feel like he's pondering, how did it come to this? I hope this version of Bernard snaps out of it soon because he's getting annoying. I think we'll get there.
Yes,
we'll talk more about it
come
shortly, but I think you're on the right track. I've heard multiple people theorizing that the hosts were fished out of the lake are some type of Trojan horse. I'm not completely ready to buy into that, considering that the Delos crew are ripping all the brains out of those hosts, searching their memories. They won't be very effective without those mind eggs. However, it could get pretty interesting once they crack open the newly upgraded quote-unquote rage monster Teddy. I bet that guy has seen some shit, or he may jump off the table and go fucking ultimate warrior on their asses. Not sure which scenario I want to see play out more.
If Teddy actually like had the face paint and hair of Ultimate Warrior, that's my vote.
That'd be pretty good. I'd be down with that. Shogun World is fucking amazing, but I'm honestly ready to move on with Maeve's mission. Hiroyuki Sanada is such great casting as the Ronin. I hope that he and his counterpart Akane continue their journey with Maeve's crew. Unfortunately, we saw this episode that they do not. Speaking of Akane, holy shit, she turned that Shogun into a fucking Pez dispenser. That was brutal. And speaking of brutal, what I first thought was a tattoo, I think was actually a cherry blossom carved into Sakura's back. Shogun World takes their brutality serious. They certainly do. Then talk about hit it and quit it Dolores, put it on Teddy, then had him reprogrammed. That was cold. In the immortal words of Belle Biv DeVoe, never trust a big butt and a smile, Teddy. I'm more and more frustrated with Dolores' character, who preaches freedom but really wants the hosts to be free to do what she tells them. With his new upgrades, Teddy may keep things pretty interesting, which will be nice because I'm growing tired of Dolores' storyline as well. More on that shortly. Fred finishes out saying, in contrast to Dolores, I'm really loving how Maeve is evolving. Her finding her voice seems to be her finding that she is connected to all the hosts around her, giving her the ability to sense and project commands to them. During the ninja attack, she could sense what everyone is doing around her, as well as the coming attack. My concern with her story is that she will find her daughter and she will be with her new mother. Will she want to break that bond, or better yet, will her daughter want to be mentally freed? Or will she react like Akane? Keep up the great show. Thank you, Fred. Lots of good insight there.
Indeed.
Thanks, a lot of it we will touch on in the following episode. We did also get an email from Matt, but we will come to that afterwards because he's reacting to the episode that came on this week.
Cool.
So, one thing I wanted to note, the previously on segment of the show, did either of you guys notice that it was a little different than it usually is?
Absolutely.
Yes.
There's like barely any words, just kind of rhythmically edited and like sonically interesting kind of sound effects, and just it was awesome.
It was sweet.
I was like, I wish
Very
they
good.
like only did that, because they tend to like just dump a bunch of exposition that will be important for this episode in those.
Right, which
But
can sometimes be a bit of a spoiler. It
Yeah.
tells you which way the episode's going.
Exactly. And I like that this one was more of just kind of like a tone poem of like, this is where we are with everything. Let's get back into the show.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of helps that this episode literally like brought everyone's storylines into the light, as opposed to us taking a week off from like certain characters.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was nice to have it kind of like, I feel like the next few episodes are all going to be like this, where it wraps everyone into it, because everyone's kind of converging on the same thing at this point. So
yeah. So it's a little easier to kind of keep track of everyone.
It felt to me like there's a chance that it might be like sort of a foreshadowing but flashbacking of like someone scrolling through all the memories of them, like shuffling through
like
cards
that.
in a deck, kind of like, oh, here's what happened there. There's like they're looking for something in particular, but we're just catching up by way of that.
That's very
That
interesting.
could be interesting.
Yeah.
Because it was very striking. It was like the same as the aspect ratio changing. As soon as it started, I was like, oh, wait, what? a couple times it'll run like one of those HBO trailers for all the shows, and it's just random scenes. I thought that's what it was at first. But when it kept going, I was like, oh, this is the episode. And I was like, oh, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And it felt like someone flipping through a photo album.
Yeah. It was very cool. It was very strikingly different. And I wonder if that's like,
they're flipping through the lore book and Elder Scrolls,
Yes.
trying to like figure out,
Trying to find which Draugr this is.
Exactly.
well, like, is that, I wonder if it was like a director choice, or if it was just something they wanted to do, or like why.
I hope there's something more to it.
That would be fantastic. So I guess we'll see. We'll have to come back at the end of season 2 and rewatch it.
All right, listeners, there you go.
Yep.
Mine's blown for the week.
Yes.
Have they been
Great job,
editing-
guys. I'll see you next week. Good work.
Have they been editing the title screens too? Like,
I haven't noticed differences from
I haven't
sequence
noticed
to
either.
sequence.
I wonder
Okay.
if there's really tiny things, but I watch every one and I'm kind of like, what's new here? But I keep seeing new things, but I'm convinced it's just me
like for some reason,
picking out new stuff.
the thing that really stood out to me with the titles this time around was the very end of them, like the Westworld Vitruvian host.
Yeah.
In the like underwater, essentially, like that. Like I for some reason hadn't picked up on that until now, and like I don't know,
I think that's been there. Like, and that's the
it
thing,
probably
like,
has. I thought I saw it and I was like, okay, like so they've been hinting about the water thing like since literally the beginning of the season.
Yes.
I think
so-
I noticed that one in the first episode because I didn't know, not to tie it in with the water yet, but in season 1 it was like the new host emerging from like
Coming
the
out from the
primordial
milk.
stuff,
Right, and
then
now
this
he's
one,
like-
now they're like being drowned essentially,
Yeah.
like being forced back under.
Yeah.
And man, it's awesome.
So
What's
good.
What's season 3 gonna be?
Who
This-
knows?
Can't
That's
even
the
talk
thing-
about it yet. We can't even talk about it.
Like you watch the credits the first time or whatever, and then after that, like I kind of ignored them, and then like for some reason this morning when I was watching the episode again, I was like, okay, like that's for some reason like maybe I didn't pick that up on the first episode of this season, so
There were a few people that told us that were like, or at least I don't know if it was people that I know in life that listen to our show, but they were like, I just kind of skipped through it or didn't even notice until you guys like said something about it being different in the first
Yeah.
episode. So I think it's one of those things where because the music and everything is the same, you can kind of like be like, oh, I know this, and then
right.
people probably pull out their phone or check
Just
their
skip it. Yeah.
So
I'm always tempted to skip it, but I enjoy the music too much.
it's so good.
And I hone in on like a different shot every time. Like the very first time when we talked about it, it was the buffalo crashing through the
glass.
like the glass.
Yeah.
And now in this most recent episode, it was the way that the hair. It's cool the way it's working through like a weaving loom essentially, but I
Yeah.
never had really put together the way it's converting like a raw material into a hair. It looks kind of like combing,
Oh,
but it goes in clearly like a raw material is the only word I have for it really, or phrase, and then it just comes out like this beautiful hair. And I had always like
Interesting.
seen the two, but then I'd always put it together and said, okay, it's kind of like a comb, it's kind of like a weaving loom, it's kind of like a combine harvester of some sort.
it always reminded me of piano strings too. Like,
Yeah.
so and there's a piano being played, of
Mhm.
course, but yeah.
Something every time grabs my attention differently. It's going
it's
to run
very
out of
good.
shots pretty soon.
Well, into the episode recap, we return to the ultra-wide screen aspect ratio, and Dolores is having a conversation seemingly with Arnold for fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to talk about this without talking about later stuff. So I don't know if you have anything in particular that you want to call out ahead of time.
When I saw this initially, I felt as though Dolores had printed herself an Arnold. Was what it was. Like because she had such affection for him previously, had remade him in a way to help assist her on her path.
I think in some ways that's true, but I have another theory about it all that will make more sense after we talk about the Cradle. Because please continue. What were you going to say?
Continue. That's what I said. I think we all thought initially it was another Arnold Dolores flashback from when he's making Dolores, but then after the kind of twist is revealed, I thought it was Ford making Bernard through Dolores. Ford using Dolores as his, like, I can't think of, I'm sure there's a correct programming term for it, but essentially because Ford is old, he can't.
Well, and he's a human who can't perfectly remember Arnold's interactions.
He can't remember the details, but I think also Bernard has always been like James Delos. I think he's kind of always been this hybrid, and he ran him through like all the same testing basically, and he had to use Dolores for all the reasons, like she has total recall, and she can be like an intermediary that also Arnold trusted implicitly, whereas I think him and Ford kind of started to come apart at the end.
That's true. I am of the mind, after watching this episode, that it is Ford in the Cradle reconstructing Arnold's consciousness to implant into Bernard.
So this scene, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Everything in that aspect ratio is happening within the Cradle.
Yes.
The Cradle essentially being like the grid.
Yes.
And now I just need to go back and rewatch the entire season.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Alex says that every week. He's like,
every time. No,
it's like this horrible, you got to rewatch 1 hour, and the next week you got to rewatch 2 hours, and now it's going to be 4 hours, and it just grows, doubles every time.
By the end of the season, I'm just rewatching all of Westworld from when we record.
Yeah, like on Tuesday, you're like, you got 2 seasons worth of Westworld to watch now. And
so every time we're in
5 days.
widescreen, as soon as Bernard enters the Cradle, we go to that ultra widescreen, which means, in my mind, that everything in ultra widescreen is a simulation.
Is in the Cradle.
And the way Dolores says fidelity, it's the same way that young William said it when he was testing James Delos. So I think Ford. We'll learn next week, because clearly Bernard and Ford are going to have a discussion of some kind.
Unless they skip it like a bunch of trolls and it's episode 8.
God, that would be so annoying.
It's going to happen.
But I think it is Ford is using the Cradle to recreate Arnold, because Arnold died, but he has Dolores, who has the total recall. He's mentioned that Arnold left a piece of him in all of the hosts. He's in the Cradle pulling the little bits and pieces that he knows are of Arnold together. Like, I think it's ultimately, I think that's his end game, and I think that's what these scenes signify. It could be just what Ford was doing when he was making Bernard. But I think if we string it all together.
No, that makes a lot more sense, because as I was reasoning out my thought, the technology for a human host hybrid, essentially, or a human implanted in a host, the technology wasn't there yet when Bernard was created.
Yeah.
So,
or it was like somewhere
that's
along
the
the way.
Biggest right away, the biggest leap, because we know that even when William visits James Delos like days before coming into the park in season 1, he's still not quite there yet.
And I guess the thing is like, did Ford somehow realize he could use the Cradle for this technology? But like, I guess, why were they making physical copies of Delos? Did they perfect the digital copy? And then we're like, all right, now we need to put it in a host and figure that out. And it was hitting the cognitive plateau?
Maybe.
Like what? So
the sensation of being back in the real world is the thing that
he says that the mind rejects the host, the body that they're in. Like his consciousness was rejecting the body.
Right. But he said it also like rejects reality, right? The reality becomes too much, so maybe it's making that leap out of the digital realm into like a physical, like being able to feel the real world again and know you are actually in the real world, not in the safety of the simulation.
Possibly.
It just reminds me of like all the times we as kids were growing up building computers, and there was always like one component that didn't quite work right within, like, the software is built, like Windows was built and then installed onto a built computer, and somewhere in there's a component where like the wiring just wasn't quite right, or like soldering was a little bit off on something on the circuit board, so at some point like you got to pull all of it apart again and start from scratch and figure out like where the little tick is that's ruining everything. And once you actually sort that out, you piece the computer back together, you load the software back on, you run a test, it doesn't work right, you pull it back.
Find the next one.
Yeah, and then it's all debugging is what they're doing.
It's physical debugging of...
Yeah.
So what do you think Ford is doing now in the Cradle that is beyond what everyone else can do? Do you think it's because he has the Cradle at his disposal and he has this massive network of all the hosts that he's able to draw out every little bit and piece of Arnold?
I think we're getting really far ahead in the episode.
We are.
Yes. I think he's literally just he's playing the puppeteer.
But I mean, what does he have that William and Delos do not? Is my question.
That I don't know.
All right, maybe we'll get there.
I think it could be Dolores. I think Dolores could be the key because she has that total recall.
That would actually be really interesting too, because William has spent all the years since he was young just
with
shunning
Dolores.
her, and just being like, "You're just another one of the things. You were special to me once, but now I know you're just another tool in the drawer." But really, she might be the ultimate. She's the OG tool.
She's the key to perfecting the human host,
or
hybrid.
At least the human host with this particular human.
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right,
That's good.
Let's move on to the next scene. Terrifying Teddy, as I've dubbed him. He's also been called Grizzly on the subreddit because he's no longer Teddy Bear. He's a Grizzly Bear. Terrifying Teddy fakes us out, reaching for the same can Dolores drops, but picking up a bullet from behind it instead. It was very, very good.
That was so good.
On the streets of Sweetwater, I should say. He visits Dolores in the Mariposa to complain about the wasting day, and Dolores seems impressed with the new Teddy, but ends up surprised and a little concerned when new Teddy seems so flippant about old Teddy. Dolores tries to get more info out of the QA tech as to where Abernathy is, but Teddy doesn't have time for his shit, so he executes him before Dolores is done, shocking her. Angela seems impressed, and Phil the tech is positively horrified. His name's Phil, apparently. By
Phil!
As we learned. As I learned when I looked it up on IMDb. What do we think about new Teddy?
I'm really surprised that new Teddy is aware of old Teddy, that he
Yes.
remembers or at least has access to that. That I did not expect that. I expected him to just be like a new character.
But they didn't wipe him. They just increased his like anger and whatever else. Like,
presumably they just like changed his personality, I guess.
they buffed his stats into asshole mode.
Yeah, but the implication wasn't that. In the last episode, he said like, if I what was Phil's?
He said something like, "There's no going back from this," or something along.
He
those
said, "I
lines,
don't know
think.
if I can put him back together," or something like that. It was along those lines. The implication to me was that it was a more extreme process than simply dialing up the stats.
Phil says, "Are you sure you want this? With changes this extreme without a full reset, I can't guarantee that he'll hold it together."
I guess maybe because we haven't seen a disclaimer like that yet. It struck me as being something different, like he was literally being erased and a new personality dialed in. But it's weird because he is still Teddy. He's just...
But I think that's where the full reset
Dark.
thing would have come in handy, like he says, without doing a full reset, which they obviously can't do on the go. They've got to take him to one of the labs to do it or something along those lines. If they can't full reset, then he's going to have that backup save like still in his memory, and then they're just going to build on top of that this other character. So maybe Teddy's going to end up like...
He's more like Maeve right now, if anything, then, huh? Because she didn't get reset.
Kind of. Like Maeve in the sense that she altered her own code through Felix and Sylvester. Yeah.
Without getting reset, her old everything is still intact.
Yes.
And she is able to build on it, like you said, and like kind of access it.
Yeah.
But this Teddy's new stats have been pushed in this direction rather than just all directions.
Yes.
He doesn't have maybe the intelligence, just anger.
I will say there was a fake screenshot or something out there showing what stats were adjusted. Somebody posted it on Twitter and then it disappeared. It did get picked up on Reddit, and it was weird because I remember, like, I saw it and I was like, oh, that's cool. I guess you could go back and screen grab it. And then when I rewatched the previous episode, they don't show that part of it at all. So that was strange that it happened that way, and that whoever posted that screenshot, I think it was like a journalist or something. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, I got the idea that all they did was like buff his stats. They didn't really take anything away necessarily. And if they did take anything away, it would have maybe been like some of his compassion, I suppose. Like,
it seems weird to me that he seems very bitter about it. He seems kind of bitter about it to Dolores, of like like especially later on
Well,
when
'cause
he mentions something about how you must have programmed that out of me too.
He's conscious of her wanting this quote unquote freedom.
Yeah.
Still, like he's got that in him, but he realizes he's not free at all.
He
may be more sentient at this point, but he's also realizing that like he really doesn't actually have any control over what he's doing because she still has a hold on him, like through his code. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very. This isn't going where I thought it would, which is probably good. Considering the Dolores. Where I was on Dolores as of the last episode.
It's making me more interested in her story arc at this point because it was super boring up until now. And now that Teddy's like a fucking maniac, like I'm all about it. Like I want to see where this goes. Like,
I like that he's kind of backfiring on her already or could potentially backfire on her.
Yeah, that was one of the comments I made to Alex is that I think she's going to regret doing what she did because he's going to somehow turn against her or something along those lines.
And Phil the tech is also not around anymore to help.
Yeah.
So if Teddy begins like sowing some dissent among the followers, saying like she just reprogrammed me, like I'm not even. I don't get to choose.
And Angela's like, we've seen Angela as like the right hand man of Dolores, and Angela's very like impressed and taken with Teddy. It seems you feel like it could.
I mean, come on.
Well,
robot affair. That's what we're gonna get.
Maybe there was some
make another tick on the Teddy butt
Teddy
counter.
butt counter. Maybe the Teddy, maybe the image of Teddy's butt made it through the mesh network, and Angela was like, "All right."
Swoon.
It was shared. Yeah, that was a really funny moment. I saw like a funny comment that said something about Angela biting her lip at Teddy.
Yeah, it was like man : dies, and then Angela : bites lip or something like that. That was good. I saw that on Reddit, but. I don't know that there's anything else.
The host version of Facebook, she hit the like button. She was like,
"Yep, absolutely,
big heart."
Who's this guy?
Who's
this big strong man?
Yeah. She just swiped right on Hostbook for.
I also really like
Hoster.
how James Marsden is playing him. Just like right away felt really different. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yes.
He no longer had that like innocent look on his face. He just looked like a total fucking hard ass.
Yeah, he doesn't even look like a do-gooder.
Yeah,
like
I'm about it. It definitely makes this story arc like way more interesting now.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I'd totally bang him. After his release from Ghost Nation, Stubbs meets up with Hale back at the Mesa. Hale notifies Delos that she has Abernathy, and then they take Abernathy down to the body shop to have him nailed to a chair for safekeeping.
The baddie shop.
Danny, the baddie shop.
Take him to the baddie shop.
You're gonna go on down to the baddie shop?
Yep.
Jersey Shore, Westworld.
Yeah. Jersey World.
Oh God.
There's something Jesus-y about
time all the time.
About Abernathy being nailed to the chair, right? Like that.
There's so many biblical references throughout all of this show.
Yeah. But it struck me as like, all right, they're literally nailing him down to the chair.
I was surprised they didn't have his arms splayed out, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Weird that Stubbs is kind of sympathetic towards it too, being the guy in the first season who's always kind of like, there's just a string of code that's going to prevent these things from killing us, blah, blah, blah. And now he's kind of like, well, you got to use the nail gun. It's weird.
I think he knows now that there's something, like there's more to them. Like they actually are feeling and like, you know, remembering, and they can recall information more so than what he had thought they were.
Do you think Stubbs is still Stubbs?
I think Stubbs is still Stubbs. I want Stubbs to be Stubbs.
I do too, but for some reason I feel like maybe he's got a couple copies out there too, you know.
I'm now every single character that walks on screen, I'm like, is it a host or not?
I just want to see a cold storage full of Stubbs.
Oh my God.
The Stubbs army.
Just like a really bad CGI shot too. Just like scrolling past all the Stubbs.
There's like 7 different versions of him doing different things, just copied over and over again and mirrored.
It'll be that scene from The Phantom Menace when they drop all the droids down and it like zooms out.
Yes. Yeah, or the scene in The Matrix where all the guns go by.
Yeah,
it's just all the Stubbs flying
it's
by.
Just racks of Stubbs.
Oh God! Somebody please make that.
And they're like, pick your Stubbs, and they're all the same. I don't know this one. Good, excellent choice, sir.
I'll take the compassionate one.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah,
man.
I mean, there are only like 2 or 3 characters that honestly kind of rung a bell where I was like, that might not be who they are, and I'll talk about the other one later.
Yeah, Well, in part, I don't know. Like,
go ahead.
Could he have gained some type of, as John was saying, like gained some type of respect for them, seeing that they've now kind of like started killing everyone and must be some kind of sentient?
I think it's a combination of that, and he's also seeing just how cold and clinical the process is for all the humans. Like everyone involved at Delos is so, they're not even treating it like it's a human-like experience. They're treating them literally like broken computers that need to be like picked up and corralled, and even down to like the CO who shows up and is talking to him on the roof, and everybody's just so belittling to him. He's kind of like, man, these people all suck.
Yeah, actually. He gets shit on, and I don't think he deserves that. But
he definitely, as Charlotte reveals, like was not clued in on much of anything at all.
Yeah,
he was almost just like a figurehead.
I think like they're definitely shaping him up to be the scapegoat, with her being like, yeah, your next performance review is gonna go great. Like it seemed so weird to me that they would blame him, but I guess they got to blame somebody, right?
That's why it's interesting. Yeah, I feel like he's really being set up for a fall. Yeah. And at the same time, by them not playing their game smartly, by being so belittling and demeaning to him and kicking him around, he's got an ego that is kind of unlike Sizemore's. You can kick Sizemore around and he'll take it because he's a survivor. He's like, whatever, I'll just get by. But Stubbs will pull a gun and shoot you. Yeah. I think he's more of that type of person who might, you push him far enough and treat him like an asshole long enough and say like, you're going to be screwed once this is all over. He'll probably fight back.
Right.
And maybe his experience with Ghost Nation has given him some of that empathy of like, this is what the humans could be doing to these hosts. And I don't know. It's interesting.
Like, I think Stubbs has more in common with like a Hector or I forgot the name of the Ronin outlaw. Musashi, yeah. He has more in line with those type of guys where I think he's willing to go out in like a blaze of glory if it's the right thing to do. And, I don't think he'd be afraid to make a stand against Delos, because if they're already clearly painting the picture for him that he's screwed. So
yeah, then he has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. There was one other thing that I was going to say, and I'm going to try and remember it. Maybe I'll think of it in a second. Next up, the Shogunate camp in Shogun World is littered with dead Shogun warriors. Akane recites a prayer over Sakura and takes her heart to transport it back to her home. Maeve sees the prayer and is reminded of her own daughter, and she rips a sleeve off of her kimono to keep the heart safe in.
Nice gesture.
Yeah. I tried to look up anything about like removing hearts in Japanese culture, but I couldn't really find anything. That doesn't mean that it's not out there. I didn't like spend a day on it. It was like a 5-minute Google search, and I was like, oh, it doesn't seem like anything's here. But it's not something that I've ever heard of, like a heart being taken home rather than a body.
I was just surprised by how like human the heart looked.
Yeah. Well, and I think
which
that goes
lends it to the whole Delos being part of the medical field now. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Like I think the hosts in all but their brain. Oh, that's what I was gonna say about Abernathy. Why don't they just take his brain out? Why is he still in the body? Just remove the brain.
Maybe they don't know.
Ship it away. She knows because she put it in there. Like, take the brain out. Why couldn't that brain? I don't know. That they could have just taken that brain out, and Sizemore could have gotten on the train himself with it, maybe.
Yeah, Abernathy's a big mystery, I think, to everybody.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, but yeah, as I was saying, I think the hosts are. We kind of had the same conversation about Blade Runner, Nick and I, where I think in the original, like after the original Blade Runner, we were thinking. We at least had the impression that the replicants were still robots on the inside somewhere. But after Blade Runner 2049, I was more of the mind of like, no, they like organically grew these androids.
Definitely in 2049. I still don't think in the original one necessarily.
Okay. Like, because the thing I keep coming back to is James Hong making the eyeballs.
Yeah, exactly.
And they seem like organic tissue. I think the hosts are completely organic tissue until you get to the brain. Is kind of except for the fact that like there's this little port that Bernard can like slice into your inner elbow and then hard port into you.
Right.
But like we see them being like slurried through that white material as like you're building the muscle around them and stuff like that. So I've always kind of been of the mind that like they are tissue.
Right.
And they can be healed the same way as humans can. We see, unless of course the Man in Black is an android, as you as you want to be true.
With his bionic arms.
That's what I'm looking for.
And we mentioned maybe bionic legs too.
I'm praying for it.
It's possible.
Are they? I guess, and I'm not trying to split hairs or talk about this, but I actually wondered this about this episode. Are they tissue in that? Will they decay and decompose? Do we know?
Maeve has MRSA at one point in season 1. Like the bullet is in here. Like they find out that she has MRSA somehow. It's a flesh-eating bacteria.
Okay.
So it's for all intents and purposes, I think it's like synthetic tissue. Like it is man-made tissue, but it's tissue.
I was wondering later when Felix just tumbles through there into that room, literally the first thought in my mind before he even emerged from the tube, I was like, oh, that room has to stink.
Oh, yeah.
Like I just thought, and then I wondered because I haven't seen anybody react to like bodies like in a scent kind of way. But I wonder if they decompose but don't give off the normal effects their actual flesh does. I don't know.
Maybe.
It's ultimately super unimportant.
Yeah.
But I was curious, like the
Still
level of
interesting.
immersion, because Sizemore is always talking about how immersive the world was supposed to be. And I wonder if it is just that hardcore where like even like, Rebus comes up and you're like, whoa, that guy reeks. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. But yeah. Akane's prayer, I think, was pretty interesting. She says, breathing in, breathing out, moving forward, moving back, living, dying, coming, going. Like two arrows meeting in flight in the midst of nothingness, there's a road that leads back to my true home. And it's all with this like rhythmic breathing that she's doing as well. It seemed very I don't know, it's just very prescient with a lot of the themes going on in the show. The idea of
balance.
Yeah, for sure. But it was good. It was very good.
I thought she cut her own heart out first for a second. The way it was shot made me like
I thought
almost
she
like
was committing suicide.
I thought so at first too, and then I was like, oh, she's still alive. And then when she held up the heart, I was like, why did she do that? And then I realized, I was like, oh, I'm a dummy.
Yeah, I thought the way that it was shot, I thought the same thing. But in the end. But yeah, we can move on to the next scene. In the Shogun world equivalent of Sweetwater, Maeve and her crew return to find Tanaka has taken Musashi, Armistice, Hector, and Hanario prisoner. Maeve attempts to reprogram him and to set them free, but Musashi interrupts, offering a duel instead. Akane requests that Maeve interfere with the fight using her magic, but Maeve says we each deserve to choose our own fate, even if that fate is death. Musashi eventually beats Tanaka, taking his dueling hand off and offering him his sword back to kill himself. As Tanaka stabs himself in the stomach, Musashi takes his head off, and with that, the crew are off to Snow Lake. This is the samurai fight that I wanted out of the previous episode.
I actually started laughing at the part where he had the two swords and held them out like this, and Kim was like, why are you laughing? I'm like, because Alex just totally lost his mind at this part.
Yeah, it was very good. I was much happier with the Shogun world in this episode.
I did really enjoy the tribal drums in that particular segment.
Yeah.
I thought it was the music in that whole fight scene was awesome.
All the instrumentation
fantastic.
in Shogun World has been great. There's they do the Westworld theme in the Japanese instrumentation later on, and it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Like I guess it's not the Westworld theme, but it's the same theme that we heard in the Raj and have also heard in Westworld. And to kind of compare the three different instrumentations, I think is very interesting.
Copy paste.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a good duel.
It was very nice. I enjoyed it.
He certainly took that dude's hand off. I was concerned that Musashi was going to reveal that he got hurt somehow. Because I feel like,
No, he's way too badass.
Yeah, apparently. I thought it was interesting that he seems like awash with emotion afterwards. Like, obviously, when you have a fight like that, your adrenaline's going to, like, take over, essentially. But it seemed like it was a little more than that to him. I think kind of him demonstrating that he was the ultimate shogun. Like because I think he was previously the shogun general was the idea.
Yeah,
right.
And then he had left, and Tanaka was like, "Oh well, I'm clearly better than you." And then Musashi just was kind of like, "Nope."
Yeah, just when he took off his head, I was expecting that random skeleton to come flying in from off screen and take out Musashi
from Dark Souls.
Yeah. Because once you win, that's what happens. You kill the enemy you're trying to kill, and then out of nowhere, something else comes and kills you, and then it's game over.
For sure, yeah. He should have gotten an arrow through the head or something by
something
somebody.
like that, just randomly.
I think part of it also had to do with Akane. I think he was also doing it for her.
Yes.
He was defending her honor because she's definitely been shit on by everyone in Shogun World for the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And so he was definitely hit this, like, I really liked it, I think for the same reason you're saying, like, it seemed like adrenaline wearing off. Like, he seemed to be kind of shaking a little bit.
Yeah.
But he, like, the way he looked up and kind of met eyes with her, and there was, like, a barely perceptible, like, little nod to her almost. Like, kind of like,
yeah,
I got you. Like,
yeah, well, because he is to Akane as Hector. No, not Hector. Yeah, Hector is to Maeve.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's, they have that companionship, and it's like Sizemore said, like he didn't program them to do that. So why are they doing that? And apparently, like it's extended far beyond just Westworld in that they've started forming relationships in Shogun World as well. So
I guess that's kind of what I would want to know is how much of it was. Since we don't have that much of a reference of Akane and Musashi's relationship,
right?
I'm not really. I don't know if this.
It might not be the
beyond.
same, but they clearly have like some understanding.
Yeah, whether or not I question the programming of it all or not,
right?
Because to me, it doesn't seem like in the type of Japan that they're portraying. I don't feel like there would be that many playboys that just kind of. Not too many fuckboys in Shogun World, They're not just going around and doing whatever they want like Hector probably would.
That's what I was just thinking, that the cultural lines seem very clearly drawn between them because honestly, Musashi might be in love with her and he would never even like tell her like,
yep,
can I take you out for a pizza sometime or anything. Like he would just be very respectful and like he's defending her honor and that's it. And he's going to stay with her in Shogun World and like, he might just live in the shed out back, but he's just going to keep an eye on her, even if he, like, desperately loves her. Whereas Hector sees Maeve and, I'm going to go for it. Like, why not?
And that's one of the many reasons that the birth rate is declining in Japan.
Well, and
all the way back to the 1600s.
Westworld is so much just grubbier. Like, everyone's way more just, like, foul.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even use the term outlaw to describe Musashi. But with Hector right away, you're like, oh yeah, he's an outlaw.
Yeah.
Musashi's probably like straight edge vegan, like doesn't drink, nothing, doesn't indulge in any way except for killing guys who step out of line and talk shit to Akane. She's also, I think, she's in a position of a little more like reverence and respect than Maeve. Like Maeve is like the madam of like this gross saloon and brothel.
Yeah.
It's cultural differences again. I mean, geisha were considered somewhat powerful to an extent,
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The next scene, Lawrence, Old William, and Emily find a downed carriage. As Lawrence sends his cousins to check it out, Old William and Emily have a chat. At first, he thinks that Ford made a host version of her to mess with him, but Emily just wants to leave and will only do so with her father. Emily demonstrates her vast knowledge of the park by pointing out that the arrows in the downed carriage aren't Ghost Nation arrows, and she kills the people who set up the trap as they try to sneak up on Lawrence and his cousins. I was very happy to get more about the Emily and Old William kind of storyline here. Mm-hmm. It's kind of something I've been waiting on. Kind of hard to talk about this one without talking about the one with them later on. It's but true. What did you think about kind of the first real exposure of that relationship, I guess?
I think his initial reaction is great.
Yeah.
I think it's pure gold. It's not one I expected either. And as soon as he said it, I was like, he would say that. Really good.
They probably haven't spoken for like the first couple hours that they've been together.
Yeah. He just like looked at her and just kept riding and like, whatever. She'll follow me or she won't.
I like the fact that she's got more of the minutia than he does even. Like I think she's better at the game than he is in a lot of ways. She might not have the like I mean, she does clearly have the brute force. She shoots those guys from pretty far away with a handgun.
I'd be curious to know like if she played any role in the creation of the park too.
Yeah.
At some point, like what more did she? Is she just his daughter and like is just hanging around the sweet ass theme park like for shits and giggles, or like did she actually help create some of it? Or
what did he make in her honor?
Yeah, he does refer to it as the family business.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah.
And business is good.
All All right. Next scene, Elsie and Bernard head to the mesa along the railroad tracks. Bernard comments that if anyone could right the ship by force of sheer will, it's Elsie. They enter the mesa and find their way to a terminal where Elsie notes that while QA has been trying to regain control of the Cradle has somehow been fighting back, despite the fact that it shouldn't be able to do so, as it only stores host backups. Bernard suggests that they go straight to the Cradle so they can see exactly what's going on. We do get some more of those like original Westworld score sound effects when they're in the mesa here, which is always great. The weird like I can't even emulate it very well with my mouth, but it's I
want to insert that though into an episode. Just your mouth.
What the fuck is that? But no, it's very good. It's cool to hear them call back to that kind of thing. She does note that they got climate control working, which is something that John and I were talking about before you got here, Nick. John seems to think that could mean that they're the ones that are able to like flood the plane later on, potentially.
The humans in control.
Yeah. But
because if we dial things back to the whole biblical thing, the humans are essentially God.
Yeah.
And they're flooding the plains and ridding it of sin
in
a way. You know?
Yeah. No, that's
Noah's
entirely
Ark
possible.
style.
But because of the fact that the Cradle has been fighting back so much, I feel like the humans don't have control of anything that Ford doesn't want them to have control of.
That's
so
possible.
It could still be part of his end game in some way. I don't know.
Help me clarify this.
Yep.
So, and this is only because I just finished watching the episode recently and haven't gotten to get through it all, but at this point where he's walking on the tracks with Elsie, when is this taking place?
This is taking place roughly a week, and that's something that I didn't point out. We do hear Charlotte Hale say in this episode when she's with Stubbs that it's been about a week. So we are smack dab in the middle of the 2 weeks that are in between the timelines that we're looking at in this season.
Now, she's with Stubbs at the command center and these dudes who rolled in to retrieve Abernathy at the same time that Bernard and Elsie are entering the Cradle.
Because when the train hits the building later on, they all hear it and react to it.
Okay.
That's my understanding. That's what I think is going on. I think they are there simultaneously.
Well, you see Bernard and Elsie walking to the Cradle, and there's guards below them on the floor beneath.
Yes.
Walking through.
So there's still other people there. The other thing is that we know in the 2 weeks ahead timeline that the Cradle has been burned to the ground, essentially. So,
and that's when I forget his name every week.
Strand and Mr. Costa
and are
kind of hanging out, and he's like, "Oh, they're all blank. They never had data on them." That all that stuff is 2 weeks later.
And Hale and Bernard are with them, right? And
Hale, yes.
Okay.
Hale and someone in Bernard's shell, who may be Arnold or could be Ford, might be Dolores. I don't know. Could be anybody. So that's my understanding. I think Bernard and Elsie are at the Cradle at the same time that Coughlin is the new QA extraction team head, and Stubbs and Hale are all there with Abernathy in the basement. And then the train hits and Dolores is going to be there shortly.
Okay, what I'm still trying to personally solve or in some way is why Bernard, when walking through where James Ellis was in that, felt he was with somebody else or that he had experienced this already. And when he said, "I'm not here with you, am I?" to Elsie, that's what's throwing me off still, where I feel like when we're seeing him and Elsie together,
it could still be some other.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that's on the level, that isn't happening in the 2 week later or even beyond timeline, and Bernard is just remembering it from before. There's something about all that feels really hinky to me, and I can't figure it out.
That's entirely possible.
Because that line was so jarring. It stood out to me like the way that when he said, "I don't see anything at all," or whatever from season 1 did. Like
absolutely.
That line, it made me just freeze in my tracks, and I was like, sitting still on the couch. I froze.
I will say that when they actually get to the Cradle, there is a little bit of time there when he starts to, like, he remembers being at the Cradle beforehand, which is when I think he took the red orb that he made and uploaded Ford to the system.
Yeah, and he was with one of the guys from Prometheus.
He's losing cortical fluid because he had the brain taken out. Remember previous episodes? Like, he's losing the fluid. He has to keep replenishing it.
I think he's only losing the fluid because he shot himself at the end of season 1.
That's possible, but that could also be them throwing you off from it. Like, they had to cut his brain open and take out the pearl.
True, too.
And that's not going to fix itself, you know? Where's it leaking out of? Do we know? We just know he's losing it?
We've seen
it's coming out of his ear, right?
We've seen it leaking out of his ear.
Was it out of his ear? Because I know it was out of the general's ear.
But at least in the first episode, when they cut back to immediately after Ford died and he's in the barn with Hale, we see the scar on his head showing that he had been shot, and then Felix repaired him, and he has the fluid leaking out of his ear. He touches his hand to his ear and he pulls it away and sees the fluid.
Okay.
But that certainly can add more confusion to it. You were saying Bernard was there with Prometheus guy?
Yeah, when we see him in the cradle, he's with, I forgot the name for them, the blank hosts, essentially.
Oh, the drones.
The drones, yeah. He's with a drone in that scene.
I don't think they actually showed him at the cradle in those flashbacks. I think he was still in the lab where
that was the lab where he picks up the newly printed pearl.
Yeah, the chestnut.
Yes.
I thought, I was thinking for some reason that was also at the cradle, and he was walking around with this drone like escort.
I don't think they have shown him in the cradle previously to when he put the Ford.
Because then I started to think maybe when he was remembering being by James Delos, he was with the same drone. Like, he was traveling with a companion. It was just somebody who wasn't speaking.
That could be true, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that would still be weird with the face blindness thing that we know that he has from the first episode, which might just be a red herring.
For some reason, it feels to me like he's retracing his steps with Elsie with Hale. Like, it feels to me like Hale is playing Elsie, because Elsie doesn't feel like Elsie from season 1 to me.
See, and that makes... Oh, I'm not going to spoil anything. I read some crap on Reddit. I don't want to spoil
But even just the way Elsie, who is like master computer person, seems to keep winding up at terminals and going, oh, damn it, I can't do this. And then Bernard has to come over and do it. It feels like... And it's like some other movie. I just can't remember what it is, though, where Hale knows the touch points, and she's getting Bernard back there and then setting him up to be like, oh, man, can you help me with this? And he's got to come over and do it so she can watch him do it. And he's basically unlocking a series of things to get her where she needs to be.
Interesting.
Because but that's why I'm confused about where all this is happening.
The problem with that is that we know that the cradle's burned.
This isn't necessarily a spoiler by any means, because it was something that happened if you were watching on any of the apps. Elsie, her name was replaced as Hale, like on all the apps if you had subtitles on.
On this, really?
Yes.
I didn't actually see any of that, but I guess maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. But I did see people talking about that, which has this question thrown in. Like, so I think.
You may be on the right track.
I think you might be on the right track, but I can't see how it all comes together as of yet, like you're saying. Like, the timeline is all fuzzy enough that, like...
Well, that's compelling. Haven't the subtitles been really wrong before in this show? Maybe not to that degree.
That's the thing, is I think this one, like, they're claiming this one was a mistake, but I think it was intentional.
You might be thinking of The Alienist, where the subtitles were
they were always wrong.
Fucking horrible.
That's true. Well, it's just we keep cross-cutting between him with Hale and him with Elsie, and the more we kept seeing it, the more I felt like they were acting alike.
And the I don't know, like the thing.
But the reason it doesn't make sense is because we see him find Elsie. I guess that all could have happened. That could have been Elsie when he found her. And he may have actually gone through all this, but we're seeing a weird mashup of both memory tracks. And essentially he's remembering doing all of that with Elsie the first time, and then he's retracing his steps with Charlotte. And so what we're seeing is the Leonard Shelby unreliable version of both.
Well, and that mirrors Dolores in season 1 a lot, because we know she was on. We were seeing her experiencing the same loop on 3 different timelines, and you could use clues to kind of figure out which is which.
Which is from which perspective.
So the idea that they would do that with Bernard seems entirely possible.
I guess the thing that I'm unconsciously also promoting is that maybe, yes, the cradle, I mean, we see the train was driven into it, I presume, because when they discover it with... I forgot her name too because I'm really bad with names in the show apparently. But the woman who we talked about last week, who's
Molly.
Yes. When they discover the entrance to it, essentially where the train went, where Dolores sent the train to explode, I think that's the cradle, right? Is that cradle underneath the
Mesa?
Yeah.
The cradle's somewhere in the mesa, but I don't think the train was used to burn it. I think Dolores is going to burn it. Dolores or Bernard is going to burn it after they talk with Ford.
Okay.
Is my guess.
Well, maybe I guess what I'm saying is that the Bernard Hale stuff that I'm proposing exists happens even later than the 2-week later timeline, that there is a third or fourth or wherever we are on the timelines
where they're just trying to recall
undisclosed timeline where they're trying to figure out how he got to the cradle, how he got in there, and how he did what he did, which I presume what he does in episode 7 or 8 or wherever we get more of the Ford stuff, we have yet to see exactly what he did. And maybe he did a mesh network wide mass killing of hosts, and that's what they want to be able to do to save the park, is essentially retrace Bernard's steps with Bernard, figure out how he was able to get into the mesh network, and then use it to execute everybody, and then start from scratch. They want to Dennis Nedry this shit from Jurassic Park, but they don't know the magic word. And maybe the thing that's going to end up biting them in the ass is that he is Arnold. He is waiting for the catchphrase essentially to trigger him back into control of himself, and maybe Ford, after they talk, plants something in him, a phrase or a sight or something, that when he gets back to the cradle again is going to put him back in control. He's going to flip the switch back on. All the hosts are going to wake up, and it's going to be chaos.
That's entirely
It's going to be
possible.
full apocalypse.
And that is Westworld, everyone.
Is that what Hale? Who says it's not full apocalypse yet?
Elsie does.
Elsie does. Okay, Elsie.
That was something that I wanted to mention. She does say something about how the system is still sending out Ford's quote bullshit quarantine notices, which had me wondering if Ford is trying to communicate with her in particular from within the cradle.
Maybe because he knows
direct her
how smart she is.
Do something, yeah.
Plus,
but I don't know.
The last thing I'll say about this theory for now, until something else triggers it in my mind, is it goes hand in hand with what you're saying, where Strand and company seem to all be dismissing Bernard as though they already know he's a host. So maybe when he wakes up on the beach, Hale and everyone put him there, and they want to wake him up. Are you okay, buddy? Man, we got some hijinks here. We got to solve it, pal. And then they're leading him through the motions.
That's been something that people have been theorizing about since he woke up. So it's like that certainly is on the table.
Okay.
I've just been hesitant to think that, but I think with the timeline trickery that we know is going on, it seems like it's entirely possible.
God, I wish I could remember.
I just don't know that it. Like, do they get to a point where they've completely restored the cradle or something in the future, and that's when he would be doing it with Hale?
Yeah, just because we don't really know.
Or maybe that's why they need Abernathy, because doesn't Abernathy have like maybe a backup of the whole park? And so they pull that.
They want to put Abernathy back in the cradle?
They put him back in the cradle to upload into a new system, a new cradle, essentially.
To repopulate.
And then they take Bernard, because that's their whole IP. What's in Abernathy is the whole IP, right? That's what they said?
Yeah, theoretically.
So he's got the entire park uploaded into his brain. They take it out of him, load it into a new mesh network to fire it back up so they can start making money again, and they need Bernard in there to like figure out how to do it.
Also, we have like
New Game Plus.
We have
New Game Plus.
We have more badass computer people on the scene now too. When they show up with
that Irish dude,
the opulence guy from the Geico commercials.
Coughlin, I think is
the Irish dude from Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah,
sure.
When he shows up and they're like, "Oh, we can't figure it out, sir," and he tells so and so to take a crack at it, and right away they manage to get something. Yeah, so maybe they have better people on hand now.
Yeah, maybe
they can commence
the jiggling.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. All right. I think I've run as far as I can with this.
All right.
Alex is like, on with my show.
No.
Are you guys done?
We'll check back in with that, because I think
I love the spitballing. It's fun.
Yeah, we'll certainly learn more.
Oh man, we should shoot spit wads while we're here doing this.
This is why you need to get in the Discord so you can join in with the spoiler.
I think I need Alex to invite me somehow.
The spoiler chat is so good.
My fault.
Okay. I'll send you an invite right now. Can I send him an invite, or is it private?
It's fine.
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Maeve and crew arrive at Snow Lake. Sizemore opens up the chute to the tunnels, and Felix tumbles down it. Akane lays Sakura's heart to rest at a shrine on the lake, and Maeve says it's time to go. But Musashi and Akane decide to stay back, and Musashi has a line that says, "No man is safe who refuses to defend his own land. Cowardice is a tin shield." And Akane twists Maeve's own words back on her, saying, "We each deserve to choose our fate, even if that fate is death."
She got Nolan.
Yes, she did. Hanaryo, on the other hand, decides to leave with the crew. That is, Hanaryo is the Armistice analog, for those who didn't know, because we haven't heard her name in the show yet. The imagery here is beautiful. I don't know if they shot it on location or what they did, but it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, it was very cool location.
And it looks like shrines and things that I've visited in Japan, so it seems very authentic. But
was this practice of keeping some like flammable salts or something in there common? Are you aware, like in this era, was it common to keep something there and like a bit of flint and whatever to start a fire?
I don't know for sure. I've seen little shrines set up like that, but not necessarily anything where, they meant to,
like a small burnt offering of some sort.
Yeah, like it, and I have a feeling nowadays they probably wouldn't use flint still. They'd probably be using matches or something else in particular, but it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility. I was hoping that if I looked up this heart thing that I might find something, but I haven't as of yet, so maybe I'll have to ask some people at work what they know and see if there's any true DNA in that somewhere. But I like the respect that they all pay to each other at the end of, when they part ways. Hector and Musashi kind of exchanged that bow, and it just seemed like a very heartfelt goodbye, even though, they kind of just barely know each other.
What do you think a similar goodbye amongst humans would look like? The same, or just way less? Like the humans as presented by Westworld. Do you think it would have an ounce of the integrity that what we see does?
Probably not. No. But part of me feels like Shogun World commands that respect of you.
That's true.
In a lot of ways.
In a way Westworld does not.
Yes.
Westworld would be like spit in the palm and handshake and then leave.
Absolutely. So it's, it seems like that is very much a cultural influence that even the Westworld hosts feel when they're there.
I think that's what's cool is watching Hector kind of be like, what do I do? All right, I guess I'll just nod. Oh, he went for it? Okay, good.
Yep. Yeah. I like that scene. I don't know if there's anything else.
It was great, yeah. I really loved the sight of like the koi pond that was set up there and everything. Yes. I was like, man, this is cool. They should all just stay here.
Yes.
Seems great.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer that they're leaving, but I think it's okay. I think it was the right amount of Shogun World.
I wonder if we're going to get... Like I think, and I said last week that I felt like we would only see Shogun World for one more episode, and while I am pleased to be right, I do wonder if we will see a quick cut back to Musashi and Akane like making a last stand there as like quality assurance shows up. Like, will we see Musashi go down in a blade of glory? Or Blaze of Glory?
Or a Blade of Glory, too. Yeah.
I think a P90'd real fast, but we'll see.
No, that's entirely possible. Or maybe we'll get the Ewok celebration song scene of everybody partying when all the humans are dead.
Oh man, that'd be so
cut over to Shogun World, and Musashi like grabs her hand in like a very like, I don't know if I should be doing this kind of.
Yeah. Here we go. First contact.
Yes. But yeah, we will move on and talk about old William sharing some liquor with Emily. She's a little shocked since he never drank it out in the real world. We learn that Emily is there because Charlotte Hale invited her to the gala and she wanted to visit the Raj again since she loved it as a child. William mentions that she was scared of the elephants, but Emily corrects him, saying that her mother was, as her mother was always weary of the hosts. William is impressed that Emily made it to him without a scratch, but he still wonders what she's doing there. Emily makes amends with William, saying that she never should have said Juliet's death was his fault, but she will not let him commit, quote, suicide by robot, end quote, and that he needs to leave with her. William agrees to head to the beach with her in the morning, since that's where QA will come to rescue or secure the island. And when Emily wakes up the following morning, all but one of Lawrence's cousins have left, and she's got no horse to ride out on.
If I'm such a pitiable man-child, why'd you come all this way just to climb under my wing? What? What?
Is that what you think? That I came here to climb under Daddy's wing?
Yeah, either that or you want a front row seat to watch me die.
No, I came here because you do not get to do that to me. Suicide by robot, or whatever the fuck your mission is now that these things can shoot to kill. Listen, I never got Mom's reactions to you because I spent so many years buying your good guy act. She was the only one who saw through it, and she paid for that. But I shouldn't have said her death was your fault. It was wrong to put that on your back. But you don't get to make that our final score. Instead, you're gonna come home with me. I'm not gonna let you stay here now and go out in some bullshit blaze of glory.
That's how you're getting me out of here. Threatening.
No, Dad, I'm asking.
I love the fact that this scene cuts to black when he puts the cork back in the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
It just there was something about the rhythm of it once again, much like the previously on where he just kind of hits it and you get the sound effect and it cuts to black. I just thought it was very good. And Ed Harris, man,
It's a tour de force.
yeah. When Ed Harris is like close to tears, I feel like I'm just like welling up with a waterfall behind my
Man,
eyes.
he looked so ghoulish in this scene.
Yeah.
The way he was lit, I was like, he looks 1,000,000 years old. He looks like a ghoul from Fallout. Like, he looked terrible.
I was gonna say I don't think he has bionic legs by how struggled he was to sit down.
Yeah.
So I think his arms are fine,
Unless
but
he just needs an oil can.
yeah, maybe they gotta
He just needs
roll
a
up
little
with,
hit, a WD-40.
with the tin man rolls
Could you
up.
imagine if when he was walking, they were just rusting noises? And they all stop and like, wait, what was that? And he's like standing there, I don't know. And they start walking again, trying to cover it up.
Lawrence pulls out an oil can.
Yeah, here you go, buddy.
He's Old Bill. Old Bill. Old Bill certainly has those.
I think I've given up hope on Old Bill ever reappearing.
Don't give up
man.
hope. I want to see him so bad.
But that way I'll be delighted and surprised. I'll have
That's
the
true.
face Ed Harris had at the end of season 1. Full of wonder and delight. Here he is.
All right. So what do you think? Do you think he is that much of a dick that he would leave her, or does he still think that it's just Ford fucking with him?
See, that's the thing. Like the issue I'm having with this whole scene in regards to their relationship is still trying to figure out, like, is he a host? Is she a host? Or is he just that bad of a dad that he didn't recognize the fact that it was, her mother that was scared of the elephants? Or is that a detail that because of fidelity, like she is using it as a test to recognize whether or not he's a host, yada yada,
or vice versa.
Yeah, or he
vice
was using
versa,
it to
right?
recognize.
So
Can you add that bad of a dad to the MFN movies list?
Does that come after insert dad here and
Or
delete old dad?
Yeah. It's a dad trilogy. That bad of a dad. I think it's a Dr. Seuss legacy book. In the Dr. Seuss verse. He never wrote that one.
No.
If Dr. Seuss is like Ford and he has uploaded himself.
oh man, if somebody wrote a Westworld book and illustrated it like a Dr. Seuss book,
it would be
that
so
would be
good.
amazing.
That would be wonderful.
And the first one could be titled "That Bad of a Dad," and it's like the man in
It's just the
black.
man in black.
Yeah, just as a
and
bad
he's
dad.
tapping his foot.
Yeah. Oh boy. Love it.
Yeah, I had trouble with this scene because I don't know who's who anymore. I feel like I'm trying
Or who's what?
who's what, right? But man, if he doesn't have bionic arms, I'm gonna be so pissed. I swear to God, because I'm pretty sure he does.
This is my favorite theory of all of them. I laughed so hard. I told Alex when I was listening to the episodes you guys did before I came back, I was dying listening to John talk about that.
I just want to.
Every episode, there's a little bit of evidence.
I just
he
want
has to put that
bionic
cork in
arms
so gently because if he used his full strength, he would just fire the cork.
Yeah.
Bottle,
Oh yeah.
like a missile.
Exactly, man.
He's like gentle. Here we go. Yeah.
And that could explain his perfect shot. Like he's always on mark with his gunplay and.
If he's a host or if he has bionic arms.
Yes.
Okay.
Both.
I am not convinced she isn't a host.
Yeah.
However, and it's easy to say, well, what about the Raj stuff? We didn't need that. And how would, if she is there because of Ford, if Ford he's like, man, I'm going to get him so good, and made her as a host, put her in the Raj just hoping she would wash up in Westworld, you know what I mean? It's a little, I guess unless that didn't happen, what if she just woke up on the water? That's where he planted her. And she thought, although the tiger's actually there.
Yeah. My kind of thought about it was, what if it's Ford from the Cradle? What if Ford's game for William is to make him choose the park or his life?
I agree. That's why I think she is a host. I think
Okay.
he's pushing her in that direction, and that's why I think he's obviously tearing up because I think he knows he's in that position. Like this host is there to call these things into question. I really like how he kind of tested her by the elephant thing.
Yeah.
And it was either two things. Either it was a test and she passed, or she failed. Either way, he might be reacting with those tears because it's a good likeness and it's making him think of his daughter. Or he genuinely said that because he let his guard down and she replied with the wrong answer, and that's why he's tearing up because of this whole encounter.
Because it's just a manufactured encounter.
The brilliance of this show in general, but also these particular little moments, is you can logically reason your way in any direction you want to in that moment. It's a lot. It's the thing I think is brilliant about Inception. When people say Inception doesn't make any sense, I'm like, yes, it does. There is a cover for every single. There's a contingency for every single hole you might try to poke into the movie.
Yeah.
Even if it can't be proven, it holds enough water that you can't say it's a weakness.
You can
brilliant.
headcanon your way into and out of
And I don't mean to
everything
continually just lump Jonathan and Christopher into the same collective wheelbarrow like they just are only one hive mind, although, man, that would make a lot of sense. But they think...
The Nolan Mesh Network.
I think they think similarly. I think they have a lot of the same sensibilities, which is really cool. But anyway, there's a reason they work so well together. But I think that scene, those tears could be read in so many different directions. And even if he did ask her the elephant question, knowing the correct answer, knowing he said it falsely and hoped that she would reply with the correct answer, it still doesn't prove that she isn't a host. Because Ford was here when she came here as a girl. He might know that
if they were tracking everything that the guests do, then he would know that.
Ultimately, it doesn't prove anything.
But that's so if we dial it back to when she's introduced as an adult or whatever, she's in the Raj. She shoots that other dude with the gun. It doesn't kill him. He's clearly human, but she never gets shot and proven as a host or not.
So it's still...
But when she washes up on the shore, she gets taken by Ghost Nation.
They don't kill her, so they might know that she's a human.
There's bits,
unless Ford is controlling all of them and he's using them to separate the humans and
move
hosts,
people around,
and he knows, like, if Ford is in there, we know he is, and he's all seeing, all commanding, he's Flynn essentially.
Yeah.
I'll just stop there.
Could
you picture Anthony Hopkins with an identity disc just walking around?
Don't even. Holding it above his head at the IO tower.
Yeah, just to leave.
The fact that my idea that Ford orchestrated the stuff in the Raj to get Emily to her father kind of, to me at least, makes it so that it doesn't matter whether or not she's a host. Like, she could still be a human, and Ford maybe still tried to orchestrate the events.
Like, he's still doing that
to bring her there.
That's
because true. Like when her and her male companion are in the Raj or whatever, and the hosts are trying to separate them to keep them from having sex.
Yeah.
Essentially, the reason being is because then they can't take their DNA. Like, the hosts can't remove DNA and store it or whatever they do with the DNA. at that point. So I would assume that's what they were doing. Is like, okay, why would these two guests want to have sex with each other as opposed to like one of the hosts? So that, you know, like we have to keep them separated so that we can do our job of taking DNA and storing it. So,
or maybe William just made it so that she couldn't bang anything in the park.
yeah, he turned it all off.
She has
Ultimate
chastity belt, digital chastity belt.
Yeah, Dad's digital chastity belts.
Those the AOL parental controls.
She may have also, if she is a host, she may have always been a host in the Raj that Ford put there because she always loved the Raj. Maybe he just was like, I'll stick her there in the event of like a contingency if I ever need a host version of her.
Interesting.
She may have been there unbeknownst to William. I don't think William gives a shit about the Raj.
Yeah.
So she may have been there for 20 years. Who knows? Like an adult version. Although if she grew up to look like that, then that wouldn't make sense. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe she was already there.
Yeah. Who knows?
Who indeed? The Nolan Mesh Network knows.
Yes, they do. Bernard and Elsie enter the cradle. We see many control units and casings like branches on trees, which I thought was awesome. Elsie calls it a hive mind, while Bernard is more dismissive, saying it's just code. Bernard recalls being there to do something, but not exactly what, and Elsie still can't see what's behind the curtain, making the cradle fight back. So Bernard offers to go in. He gets auto-extracted into the cradle and wakes up on the train to Sweetwater in ultra-wide aspect ratio. He sees the mesa and disembarks in Sweetwater to find everything operating as it normally would. This shit was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It was so rad. Like,
I got not emotional, but like I had the feeling watching Bernard. I almost hesitated what to call him, but watching Bernard be on the train like a new game, like a new player would, or like essentially in Teddy's place, sort of. Walking through Sweetwater, watching Sweetwater function as it's supposed to, watching Dolores emerge the way she should, just like the good old days, so to speak.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is what it feels like. Just watching it and remembering what the show was like in episode 1, it reminded me, I was like, this is what happens when I pull out like my Xbox 360, dust it off, pop in a game that I loved, or like even better. It's like starting a new game in Skyrim, which I've done, 8 times or something, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in Skyrim it's a lot. And
you got to sit through that fucking intro scene every time. God,
yeah, that's the train ride.
Worst.
Except in a train, it's a little carriage,
right?
Yeah. But I mean, although you've played it so many times and you know each of those beats like the back of your hand, there's something to me anyway that's so refreshing and like fun and nostalgic and comfortable about playing through that again. And that's just kind of the same sense I got. It's especially when you leave Helgen in Skyrim and you emerge into the world, and then you are like, go whichever direction you want. It doesn't matter what you do. It's up to you.
Yeah.
That to me in the first time running into Riverwood is essentially this, and like all the characters are moving as they should be. They're all at their places. That's exactly what I thought of, and I was like, this is giving me some feeling, and I just don't know how to describe it. It was just it was great. That's my video game analog for today.
That's good. It's a good one.
Thank you. Maybe Red Dead Redemption would have been a better comparison, but
I think it works.
I think we all know
regardless.
Skyrim enough.
We get it
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the visual look of the cradle bathed in red light. The fact that like the pearls are just like on the end of trees in these casings, I feel like is just a very interesting like representation of that entire host backup. Like all of them are stored in those individual nodes on the network and can be like plucked out and copied or something like that if they need to. Not that they would need to like physically pluck it out, but they could just digitally copy it.
Did you guys talk about the name, the Cradle, while I wasn't here?
A little bit, yeah. John pulled up like the etymology of it, saying that it was like the where something is nurtured or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. We did touch on it for a second though.
I think I remember that because I remember thinking while I was listening to it that you guys didn't talk about GoldenEye. And that in GoldenEye, have you seen the movie GoldenEye? I assume you've both played the game.
Back in like 1998.
Yeah, it's been a long time, dude.
Okay, you played the game though, right?
Yes.
Did you at least play through the campaign?
Back in like No.
I only ever played the multiplayer. That's all.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, you guys missed out on a good story. It's good. It's a great game. Anyway, the final area in the game is called the Cradle, and it's in the movie and the game, obviously, but it's like essentially the mechanism that controls the GoldenEye satellite.
Okay.
It is the command center, essentially. It's also where the climax of the movie takes place. But as soon as they said it in this show, as soon as I heard the phrase the Cradle, the first thing I could think of was GoldenEye, but I probably spent a lot more hours than you guys playing that game.
Yeah.
Also seen the movie like a million times because it's great.
Yeah.
But that's the first thing I thought of. And the Cradle in GoldenEye is like, it's a command center, but it's also really interesting because it actually has to be like, it's like a satellite array, basically, sort of. It has to be positioned in like a certain direction to like to command the GoldenEye satellite.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's really cool. But that's the first thing I thought of, and it seems to almost serve this sort of a similar purpose, that it's sort of a command center of sorts.
Well, and I think
the meaning, it has double meaning in the show. It's also a place where like Ford is able to go with the word nurture, like develop and grow something. But I think it also might serve as like his sort of where he can control and command everything. We think it's up on the plateau there, but I think the Cradle might be the real like mind of the park.
From what we know about the Cradle, there were lots of questions on the Reddit, quick questions of like, what is the Cradle? And to me, what it was previously was like, this is where they kept all of the backups, but they also, like, from the verbiage that is out there on the like HBO Westworld websites that they own, they say that the Cradle is like the simulation engine of the park. So they can take simulations in the Cradle. They can run up all of these hosts against each other in different ways to engineer storylines and kind of see how it would play out given different parameters, which comes back to my thoughts on Ford using it to run the fidelity tests on his Arnold creation. Or even, I think, because Delos, the clone Delos, says something about how he says something to William about, oh, so you're doing something. Your fancy toy that you made with my investment does something, or it actually works. Because I think William did use the Cradle in some way to construct that consciousness or something. We'll find out more in the future. But now that Ford is in there, which we don't know as of yet, but now that Ford is in there, it's taking on its own mind of like being the actual control engine. Like he's controlling everything from the Cradle.
Right.
Whereas that wasn't necessarily its purpose previously.
But it had the potential to be.
Yeah. So Bernard has a line. He says, the pain's just a program, which I thought was very interesting for him. The idea, him embracing his hostness and kind of being like, yeah, I'm going to feel this thing, but it's really nothing. I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of a weird, like, he seems very dismissive of the tech of all of it, despite the fact that he is a host.
He's a nihilist.
Yeah, he's like this weird nihilistic being in the hosts.
I think it's also sort of somewhat of a, I don't want to say it's a coping mechanism, but it kind of is. Him just kind of...
He's rationalizing.
Yeah, exactly. The way that people do, like when they're diagnosed with something terminal, like you find a way to eventually find a way to rationalize it and lets you assess it neutrally, looking at it objectively.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's the same is true for us, really. Pain is essentially, at its core, sort of a program. It's your body just telling you a message, basically.
Right, it's an instinctual response.
People say that they can, you can obviously build up pain tolerances and pain thresholds, and some people, certain, especially like religions and stuff, people think they can transcend pain and ignore parts of it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right. Next up, Coughlin and crew parachute onto the top of the mesa to begin extracting Abernathy and also take control of the park back. And he seems to be very dismissive of Stubbs. We've talked about this a little bit.
Ashley.
Yeah. Mr. Ashley Stubbs.
That was funny. He's like,
yes.
Ashley? Oh. He's like,
really?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know that there's a whole lot to say about them. I'm wondering if they all end up dead. That's kind of my guess, is that they fail because Dolores pops in and kills everyone, and that's why Strand gets sent.
Yeah.
With a much bigger team and more bodies and that kind of thing.
Coughlin is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he seems like a very interesting character. I'm excited to see more of him and how he and Dolores' crew kind of bounce off of each other, literally and figuratively. Maeve and crew make it out of the tunnels, and Sizemore has surprisingly brought them back back out right at the homestead. Maeve decides to go it alone and retrieve her daughter. We get some good dialogue between Maeve and Sizemore, as there usually is.
Mm-hmm.
Says, yes, you can enjoy your one admiral contribution, but then she actually gives him like a sincere thank you, which to me kind of weighed on him as like should I really call back up like I planned to with my phone thing that I took from last week? But ultimately we see he decides to do it anyway.
Sizemore's interesting. He's kind of, I realized in this episode, he's kind of taken on this weird, like, sort of like ferryman role for Maeve. Like if we kind of flip this, what would be the instinctual script, and make Maeve sort of the protagonist of that story, which I guess she is, but I think we will want to try to assign that to humans where we can, but it's obviously that left the station a long time ago.
Yeah.
He's kind of guiding her through this whole journey. He's the one who knows the ways, and it's almost like sort of a Dante's Inferno kind of thing too. Like he's guiding her through all these like circles of hell, sort of, and where all these trials that she's sort of passing and learning more and more about herself. I mean, a lot of the stuff that she's learning, though, and a lot of the things that are happening to her are kind of happening between episodes. We don't see her in the wholesale slaughter of all those Shogun. We just see the aftermath, so it's easy to kind of forget about some of that stuff. But she's gone through some shit just to try to get to this girl. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That she's like gone almost to hell and back. I mean, she comes out of a grave, like in this scene, like literally, it's like to hell and back, and they emerge from like this grave. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And Sizemore is like, I've liked him more and more and more and more every episode this season, and by this point, I'm like, man, he's a great character. Like they've actually done some pretty remarkable stuff with him. I think it's awesome. For sure.
No, it was certainly. I don't want to call it character rehab, but it kind of was, considering where I feel like how most of us felt about him in season 1.
I think they're just that good.
Yeah.
That they wanted to keep him in their back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. It helps that he's the writer too. It kind of is a good foil for that too. Like we're saying, like a lot of the stuff that's happening in the story is reflexive of him, and watching it bounce off of him is really good too.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that was mentioned on Decoding Westworld last week, is that he was essentially giving like director's commentary in real life.
And he still is sort of authoring the story of Maeve by bringing her through all this kind of stuff. He still is contributing to this narrative, whether he knows it or not. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Old William and Lawrence find themselves in Ghost Nation territory and end up getting attacked. Not a whole lot here. I'm kind of curious why we see that, if it's going to put them in some place that they need to be for next episode, or if they're being... I wondered if they were being herded in a similar way that Maeve is as well.
I'm waiting to see who they intersect with.
Yes,
I feel like they're on their way to run into somebody.
So, but he does have a good line. He says, "I'm going to bleed you both like goats if you don't shut the fuck up." So good. And then we get to one of the very big scenes in the episode. Maeve heads down to her former homestead to see her daughter sitting on the porch. She sits down and talks to her, learning that her daughter has a mother and daughter dolls, and she doesn't want the bad man to take her daughter away again. Maeve says that Anna's mother would never let that happen again, and only to be interrupted by another voice that her daughter calls Mama. Maeve stands in horror and disbelief as Ghost Nation, led by Akecheta, rides up and to take them away. Maeve runs and tries to get away, but trips, and Akecheta tells her, "Come with us, we are meant for the same path," but Maeve replies, "Your path leads to hell." Interesting, given what Nick was just saying about going through hell. Sizemore, Felix, and Sylvester aren't sure what to do. Sizemore pulls out his comm unit to call Delos for help, and Felix gets angry, choosing to head down and help Maeve instead.
What's her name?
Anna.
Is this her sister?
That's her mommy.
Oh, I bet she loves Anna so much.
She doesn't want Anna to get taken away again.
Who would take her away?
Bad man?
No. You see, Anna's mother is very, very strong. And she would never, ever let anything like that happen again.
Hello? Can I help you?
Yeah. So
we called this
yeah,
a million years ago.
Yep. Maeve finding her daughter, who once again has a new mother. Yeah, I don't understand what part of her wouldn't have seen that coming. But maybe
love and blind hope,
or just pure denial.
Yep.
Yeah, just the idea that like this is my daughter and my daughter will recognize me.
Yeah, I think that's what it deals with. Like, because she's able to recall those memories, like maybe her daughter would too when seeing her face, you know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see if she's kind of like,
I mean, her daughter's not scared of her, obviously, you know, like there's no apprehension to like sit and talk with her or anything like that. So,
and I wondered if the daughter's story there was something that was written for her, or if it was something that she's kind of developed in her own accord. The idea of the child being being taken away from the daughter. Like, I
think it might have been written. I feel like Ford's behind this. I don't want to keep blaming everything on Ford, the boogeyman, but if Maeve is such a player, has emerged as such a dominant player in this game, I could see him.
It was Ford giving her that to kind of draw it out of Maeve. He's
kind of cruel too.
Yeah.
I think it's great that Maeve is operating on love so much, and Dolores is operating on hate so much. And
yes.
I felt like we all saw this coming, and I just want to know where it's going to go from here, because now I don't know how she's going to react. If she's going to continue on the path of like goodness, or if she's going to turn like evil too, saying like, "Oh, they wiped my daughter."
Right.
Yeah. And well, like what? I'm wondering what part of it. Like, how is she going to? She clearly knows that she could unlock her daughter's mind, but will she choose to do it or not?
Yeah, after the lessons she just learned in Sushi World.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of weird that she doesn't try to use her mind trickery, especially when she speaks Lakota to them. She should be able to do that over the mesh network, but maybe that's coming. We don't really see how that ends out.
Yeah, I feel like just her instincts to protect her daughter kicked in, and she just
was on autopilot
rather than turn into like Jedi mode. She
that's
just
fair.
fled. She also in the moment may have not been able to speak Lakota. It may have taken her a beat to like
figure
access
it
it.
out.
Yeah, which is the first thing I thought too. Because as soon as they were riding up there, I was like, "Oh man, does she speak that?"
Yeah.
And she did. I was like, "Okay, so she does now."
Yeah.
It's like the Matrix. I learned how to fly a helicopter.
I know Kung Fu. I know Lakota. All right, Dolores.
Second Matrix reference.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Surprised we don't make more, to be honest.
Dolores tells Teddy that her father told her to run from Westworld, and Teddy comments that he didn't think he'd want to leave, but, quote, "I suppose you fixed that too." He offers Phil the tech a bullet and a gun, as it's the last of his mercy, and that he better use it fast. Angela unlocks the caboose from the rest of the train and allows it to speed ahead. Nicole wanted me to share a parallel that she made, because there's a song in the new Taylor Swift line, there's a line in the new Taylor Swift song where she's like, Taylor can't come to the phone right now because she's dead, or old Taylor can't come to the phone right now because she's dead, and she's like, it's Teddy. Old Teddy can't come to the phone right now because he's dead.
Oh my God.
I was like, yeah, that's basically what's going on here.
Taylor is Ford, confirmed.
Yes. But yeah, this is where that real like spite, like Teddy seems kind of spiteful about the fact that he got
definitely very passive aggressive.
Yes, which is great. Passive aggressive Marsden is a good Marsden.
It's like angry teenage Marsden.
Yeah, like from that show that he was on in like the early 90s. Can't remember the name of it though. It's about like a family and like a big family.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think they owned a zoo or something like that.
Delete old dad.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Delete old Teddy.
He was super angry on that show. I remember that.
Well, it's like I know Willie's favorite scene of him is in Sex Drive when he's beating up the garage.
Takes apart the garage door. Yeah, it's awesome. It's so funny.
But yeah,
I can't wait to see Marsden just as in like an old man. What's he gonna be like?
Oh, I don't know.
Besides immaculate looking.
Yeah.
He's just. Have
you ever seen something so full of splendor?
Oh man, he's one of those guys where every time I've enjoyed him since like X-Men. I thought he was great since even the first X-Men, but I always like forget about him, and then like he'll be cast in something like, oh, he'll probably be great, and then he is. He's always it's the same thing with Woody Harrelson. I just saw Solo, and I was like, man, Woody Harrelson is always good. I've never seen him put in a bad performance, and Marsden is the same way, no matter like what type of character he's playing. So just keep giving him more characters in Westworld, just different variants of Teddy.
For sure, absolutely.
Him and Lewis Hurtham will just have a schizo off.
Him giving that bullet to the guy.
Awesome.
It's just and Phil being completely horrified at the situation that he's about to face. Rough stuff. All right. 2 more scenes left. Coughlin and crew make it to the control room, and Atek is complaining about his difficulty trying to regain control of the system. Hale comes up saying that Abernathy is in Auxiliary Lab 3, and Coughlin is pissed that she left him down there. They restore the map and note that the train is heading straight for them as they hear an explosion. Teddy, Dolores, and Angela watch on as it happens, and Elsie wonders what the sound is as Bernard is inside the cradle. We spoke about some of this earlier. I don't know that there's much else to say. I'm wondering if the shots that we've seen of Bernard shooting the P90 are going to come after this.
We've seen shots of that? And like his moments of remembering.
When he was slipping through time in the first episode, there are shots of him freaking out in the control room and also using the P90 to kill a bunch of people. So it should happen at some point soon, I would think. Also, the bear wasn't in there.
Oh,
there was no bear in there. Right. So there's going to be a bear in the control room.
Bear?
Yes, where is bear?
Man.
Someone's putting in cheat codes. Bear's going to appear out of nowhere.
Spawn bear.
Yeah.
Spawn bear here, please.
Increase aim.
Yes.
Bear aim.
Yeah. No, it's P90 aim.
Aim bear.
Oh, there you go. All right, and then finally we return to ultra widescreen in the cradle. Bernard sees Dolores in her same old blue dress. He spots a dog that looks an awful like Jock, Ford's dog from season 1, and it heads into the Mariposa. He walks past Teddy on his way in, and Bernard looks over at the piano. Jock lays at the foot of it with Ford playing the piano. He pauses and says, "Hello, old friend." As soon as I saw Jock, I was like, "Oh!"
Well, as soon as you see the gray-haired man sitting at the piano, I was like, "That's Ford."
Well, no, but not when the dog is on the street, I was like, "That dog is Jock."
Yeah,
that is Ford's old dog that Bernard or Arnold made a copy of, and
Ford was in there.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my God, this is where we're going with this," and God, it was incredible.
It was a good moment.
It was a great reveal. So excited for Hopkins.
I'm very excited and you know what? I'm kind of happy that it's not necessarily like Hopkins put himself in a body. Like the idea that it's digital Hopkins and not he. Like it felt to me like he would be kind of. I think it would have undercut his death if he just kept a copy of himself to be killed, or he.
That's what I was going to ask.
Came back.
Do you think?
I think the Ford that died is real Ford, but I also think that this is transcendence. This is him living out a digital life as an AI construct that has been recreated from his consciousness before he died.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's not. Do you think then, if it does follow those parameters of what you just described, is it not truly Ford then, but a continuation of Ford? Like Ford, the man who was born and created Westworld, is dead and gone. This is just a furtherance of him, essentially.
It's a transcendence like that. I don't know that there's really any other great way to say it. Sorry, Wally Pfister, but it's he. That's all. It's back to that philosophical question of, if you replace every part of a boat, is it still the same boat?
Mm-hmm.
And you can debate that question forever, but I don't know that you'll ever actually arrive at an answer.
Our bodies recreate cells repeatedly over time. I think there's a specific amount of time where we no longer have the same cells we had in us in our entire body, 8 years previously or something like that. So.
Yeah. So it's like it I don't know. It's a very interesting question. It's certainly was that Delos in the James Delos bodies,
or just something that thought it was Delos,
or a facsimile of him. And I think I think it comes down to like, for all intents and purposes, that is James Delos. That is Ford in living in that computer as a digital being at this point. Biodigital jazz, man, for sure.
Maybe he knew because of them testing out on Delos that he couldn't put his consciousness into a body. He just decided to stay a part of the mesh network in order to retain stability.
Which, yeah, and like I think that might be part of the key that he has from William of like, oh, you're never going to actually figure that out because that's not how it's going to work necessarily.
Right.
But I don't know.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, the potential. This is the moment in this season that I was waiting for, is for the potential to be blown wide open again, like the way it was in season 1. It felt like we were just following some paths in season 2 so far to see where they would wind up, and I think they all wind up here.
Yeah,
this is pretty great.
And I guess I'll modify my previous idea of like, maybe it's not necessarily that Ford is workshopping a full Arnold consciousness, but he's gathering as much data about Arnold that he can so he can upload it into Bernard. So it won't be Arnold, but he'll have Arnold's memories. He'll know what Arnold was doing with Dolores. He'll have, because Dolores asks Bernard at Fort Forlorn Hope, like, is there any amount of him in you? Like, is there any Arnold left in you? And for him to maybe regain some of that will allow him to, you know, be useful to Dolores or help Ford in this quest or whatever's going on.
What do you think is Ford's quest before? I think we left season 1 thinking he wanted... I think you and I both had different ideas. I think I was kind of thinking he wanted humans to fight for their right to Earth and to the position of the dominant species on the planet. He wanted them to earn it. And I think you were kind of like, Ford is ready to burn it all to the ground and let the host take over. Like, he's finally there where Arnold was, 30 years prior or whatever.
I think I personally want it to be Ford's apology to Arnold.
Do you think he wants to mend the fences between hosts and humans, or do you think he is not interested in that battle anymore either? It's just strictly personal. Even then, he can't apologize to Arnold because Arnold is dead. Like, is this about making himself feel better? Is it an apology to the world because he robbed it of Arnold?
Well, I think it's because he says in season 1, like, any man who, a man whose mistakes take many years to fix must be quite the man, is kind of what he says. And I think he's trying to somewhat fix those mistakes.
Gotcha.
Because Arnold recognized the hosts are
a life form,
and maybe the ones that need to inherit the Earth. I think Ford is kind of the mind of like, I need to get these hosts into a place where they have that chance to take over the world, but maybe he still wants to let the hosts and the humans shake out whether or not humans should be a thing anymore or not.
Gotcha.
That's kind of where I'm at. Any other thoughts, John?
No, I'm just like, my mind's a little blown thinking about that.
Yeah. So that's the end of the recap. We did get an email from Matt. He said, hey guys, fresh off the episode, here's what I've been thinking about most. Number 1, Ford is back, ? And seems to be controlling things from inside the cradle. Seems to be, quote, normal, end quote, in there for now. Yeah. I remember, I think David Chen had said something like, hey, it's pretty weird that like everyone, like Ford was able to plan everything to it. Like, he's like, we're reaching Saw levels of coincidence for Ford being able to plan everything out. But I think Ford is literally in there. Like, when Ford speaks through young Ford, that's Ford in the cradle controlling young Ford to go talk to William at the beginning of the season.
He essentially has a monitor and a microphone, and he's able to, I agree. I would agree with that for sure.
I think that's got it. So it's not so much that he orchestrated all of this before he died.
I mean, he had to orchestrate a lot of it. We got to give him some credit there. But
for sure. But he's been able to control things since then as well, and monitor the situation and adapt and react to it as well.
He's just a master chess player, basically.
Yeah.
He's able to orchestrate some and then improvise and adapt and react
based on response.
Apt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt's second question, he says, when is the opening scene in the timeline? I think he's speaking of the Dolores and Bernarnold scene, which, as I said previously, I think takes place in the Cradle. We don't really know exactly when it's happening, but that might not matter because it's in the Cradle. Like, it could just be a simulation.
In the Cradle, or you don't think it's in that secret bunker?
I think it's in that secret bunker in the Cradle.
That
I think it's a
in
simulation.
The Cradle? I thought that bunker was like further out.
Well, no, but I think the Cradle,
okay, I got
like
it.
in simulation
okay.
in the Cradle
I was
what I'm
just
saying. Yeah,
I was messing up. Okay,
no,
I got
but
you.
I think that is like that's one of 10,000 cycles that have run within a millisecond of Ford being in there trying to mine out as much Arnold as he can.
We don't know how time works in the Cradle, which is so enticing.
He just needs more GPUs to get his Arnold coin going.
That's true, yeah. Man,
Arnold coin?
Think about how many Arnold coins.
The Bernard chain is broken. He's got to fix it with the GPUs.
Think of this is how blockchains
I
take over the world.
I love this idea of how time moves differently between the two, because even before Tron Legacy came out, when you and I were talking about it, we were trying to reason out what the math might be inside the grid.
Yeah,
like
what is a cycle?
If Flynn has been missing from the real world for 35 years or 25 years, how long is it?
I think it's 30 years.
30 years, say, between the real world and if it's been 30 years our time, how long has it been in the grid? Could it have been like 10,000 years?
Is he 400 years old?
Exactly. Yeah. Is he insane? Like, what is the passage of time? What does that do to your mind? Is the number one thing I always come back to. Is like, we can only withstand so much time, and I think every story of immortality never ends well.
Well, and it's very Nolan-y with like Interstellar in the sense of like being down on the planet, you experience what, but then back up on the ship there 30 years later.
Yeah.
Like, it's that, but on a microscopic level as opposed to a planetary level.
Do you think now Anthony Hopkins' tweet of him dancing around like a goofball, is that canon? Is that him in Westworld?
That was, that's a Cradle simulation.
That's Ford.
Ford dancing to...
Let me see how this tweet will do. Let me run the simulation.
All right, Matt's third question. He said, William is the worst dad ever. Literally left her with one guy in a park of killer robots, though he did note that she had made it to him without a scratch. Look forward to hearing a recap and analysis. Yeah, I don't know. I still think he's skeptical of it actually being his daughter, is my
I think it's
standpoint.
a combination of that and when he says the line, like, you may be more from my line than I thought.
And you like to admit.
Maybe he's like, she can take it. If she really wants this, he's going to make her go through this gauntlet.
She's got to play a game too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which obviously she's up to the challenge because she came to the park anyways. You know, it's not like she knew it was going to be tough. You know, so
God, I wonder how many parks there are still. When she said the Raj is her favorite, is it just her favorite of 3 or?
Well, we know there's 6 at least.
Oh, it's so good.
We know there's 6. We know there's Westworld, Shogun World, and the Raj, and there are 3 more that have not been uncovered. There may
got to be
more.
a medieval one. Has to be a medieval one, like a fantasy one.
Yeah,
I would think so.
Rome? Do you think the Roman one is there?
I hope not. It's so stupid.
Are they all built on like similar empires?
Well, and there's also Jurassic World. You know?
Ooh,
that's entirely possible.
The dinosaur part.
I like those movies so much more if they prove to be just a giant tie-in to Westworld.
All right, I think that's it.
Thanks to Matt for that email.
Yes, thank you,
Matt.
Matt. Thank you, Fred, for emailing earlier as well. Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on westworld.fm. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Podcasts. We're also Westworld FM on Twitter, and you can email us westworldfm@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our show and send your thoughts on HBO's Westworld. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Westworld or our podcast. The Midwest Podcast Network has several other shows about video games, like the one hosted by John, who's here.
Indeed.
Horror movies, and more. Check out all of our shows at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme music is the song Industrial Cinematic by Kevin MacLeod, and it is being used under an Attribution Creative Commons license. That's it for our episode this week. We're excited for the next episode of Westworld, and we'll have another episode of our podcast out after that. But until then, may you rest and have a deep and dreamless slumber.